Okay, let's get real for a second. Today is June 16th, 2025, and right now, somewhere in the world, someone is making a decision that sounds like it's straight out of a dystopian movie. They are deciding to sell a piece of their own body, a kidney, a part of their liver. And why? To escape, to get out. This isn't about buying the latest iPhone or a new car. This is about survival. It's a desperate gamble for a chance at a life that isn't defined by crushing poverty, endless debt, or a complete lack of opportunity. In countries like Pakistan, India, and China, millions face a future that looks like a dead-end street. And for them, selling an organ feels like the only key to unlock a door to somewhere, anywhere else. Imagine being so broke that you look at your own body not as something to be cherished, but as your last remaining asset. It's a transaction born from pure desperation. Think about it. You're a farmer in a rural village, your crops have failed for the third year in a row, and a loan shark is knocking at your door, threatening your family. Or you're a young person with dreams, but the only job available pays barely enough to eat, let alone support your parents. This isn't a choice made lightly, it's a calculation made when all other options have vanished. The promise of a few $1,000s feels like a lottery win, a one-shot opportunity to pay off crippling debts, and maybe, just maybe, fund a perilous journey to a new country where you hope things will be better. The dream they are sold is simple: a better life. It's the universal human desire to provide for your family, to see your children have opportunities you never did, to escape a place where your future feels predetermined and bleak. For many, escaping their home country is the ultimate goal. They see news and social media from other parts of the world and imagine a place with stable jobs, safety, and a chance to build something. The organ becomes a passport. It's the price of admission to this dream. The tragedy, of course, is that this dream is often built on a foundation of lies, and the price they pay is far higher than they could ever imagine, leaving them physically and emotionally scarred for life. This decision is rooted in a systemic failure. When a society cannot provide its citizens with basic security, education, or economic pathways, it creates a market for desperation. People aren't just selling a kidney, they are selling their health and their future, because the present is unbearable. They are pushed to the edge by forces far beyond their control: economic instability, political turmoil, or even just the bad luck of being born in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's a gut-wrenching reality check on global inequality, where the poor are forced to literally give pieces of themselves to fuel a demand created by the wealthy, all for a fleeting chance at a life we might take for granted. So how does this even happen? It's not like there's a Yelp for organ brokers. This is where the traffickers come in. These guys are masters of manipulation, and they have a well-worn playbook. They prey on the vulnerable, sliding into their lives with promises that sound too good to be true, because they are. They use social media, creating fake support groups, or posing as benevolent agents who just want to help. They promise a huge payout, say $10,000 for a kidney, plus a safe journey to a new country. They make it sound like a simple, risk-free procedure. They might even tell you your kidney will just grow back. Spoiler alert, it won't. Once they have you hooked, the deception deepens. The trafficker often becomes the sole gatekeeper to your escape. They might help you get a passport and a visa, but they'll charge an exorbitant fee for it, putting you immediately in their debt. Suddenly, that $10,000 you were promised starts shrinking. There are processing fees, travel costs, and medical expenses. By the time you get to the operating table, often in a shady, unlicensed clinic, you're trapped. Your documents are held by the trafficker, you're in a foreign place where you don't know anyone, and you're completely under their control. The power dynamic is absolute, and backing out is no longer an option. After the surgery, the nightmare gets worse. The post-operative care is minimal, if it exists at all. Victims are often left in a dirty room to recover on their own, dealing with immense pain and the constant risk of infection. And that promised payday? It almost never materializes as advertised. That $10,000 might turn into $4,000, or even nothing. The traffickers will claim more expenses, or simply disappear, leaving the victim with a permanent scar, chronic health problems, and the crushing realization that they've been cheated. They are left physically weaker, unable to do manual labor, and now in an even more desperate situation than before, but with one less organ. The cruelty of this system is that it's designed to leave the victim with no recourse. The traffickers often forced them to sign documents stating the organ donation was voluntary and altruistic, a gift to a supposed relative. This forges a legal paper trail that protects the brokers and the corrupt doctors involved. If the victim goes to the police, many of whom are undocumented in the country where the surgery took place, they risk being arrested or deported. They are trapped in a cycle of exploitation, silenced by fear, and the very system that was supposed to protect them. They traded a piece of their body for a dream, only to wake up in a worse reality. Now let's zoom out. Why is there a market for this in the first place? It's simple economics, supply and demand. Globally, we have a massive organ shortage. In 2023, over 100,000 people were on the waiting list in the United States alone. People are waiting for years, dying while they wait for a legal transplant. This desperation creates a powerful demand for organs on the black market. And that demand is met by a supply chain fueled by global inequality. This is the dark side of globalization, a phenomenon known as transplant tourism, where wealthy patients from developed nations travel to poorer countries to buy a new lease on life. This isn't a small-time operation. The illegal organ trade is a massive global industry, estimated to be worth up to $1.7 billion annually. It's a transnational criminal enterprise that connects wealthy buyers in North America, Europe, and the Middle East with desperate sellers in places like India, Pakistan, and parts of Asia and Africa. A patient might pay up to $200,000 for a kidney transplant package, but the person who actually provides the organ, they get a tiny fraction of that if they're lucky. The vast majority of the profit goes to the brokers, the corrupt surgeons, and the criminal networks that facilitate the entire process. The system thrives because of weak governance and corruption. In many of the countries where this trade is rampant, laws against organ trafficking are either non-existent, poorly written, or simply not enforced. As we saw in a recent case from January 2025, dozens of officers from Pakistan's own Federal Investigation Agency, the very people tasked with stopping trafficking, were dismissed for being complicit. When law enforcement is part of the problem, who can victims turn to? This state-level corruption creates a safe haven for traffickers to operate with near-total impunity, knowing that the chances of getting caught, let alone prosecuted, are incredibly low. Recent events paint a grim picture. In July 2023, authorities in Indonesia broke up a ring that had trafficked 122 people to Cambodia to have their kidneys harvested, an operation that had been running since 2019. In China, despite new regulations, concerns persist about a lack of transparency and the horrifying possibility of forced organ harvesting. And humanitarian crises, like the civil war in Sudan, create a steady stream of displaced and desperate people who are told that selling a kidney is their only ticket to safety. The global demand for organs turns human bodies into commodities and human desperation into profit. It's a brutal market where the rich can buy life and the poor are forced to sell it. So, we're left with a pretty bleak picture. It's easy to feel hopeless, but we can't, because giving up means abandoning the victims to the predators. The fight against this horrific trade has to happen on multiple fronts, starting with addressing the root cause: extreme poverty. Governments and international organizations need to invest in creating real economic opportunities, education, and social safety nets in the countries where people are most vulnerable. When people have viable alternatives, a stable job, a way to feed their family, access to healthcare, they are far less likely to see selling an organ as their only way out. This is the long game, but it's the most important one. Next, we have to get serious about cracking down on the traffickers and their entire network. This means strengthening laws, and more importantly, actually enforcing them. It requires international cooperation between law enforcement agencies to track these networks across borders. And it means holding everyone in the chain accountable, not just the low-level brokers, but the surgeons, the hospital administrators, and the corrupt officials who look the other way. As we saw in Pakistan, internal purges of corrupt officers are a start, but it needs to be followed by robust, transparent prosecutions that send a clear message: this crime will not be tolerated. We also need to protect and support the victims. They are not criminals, they are survivors of a traumatic crime. We need to create safe channels for them to report what happened, without fear of being arrested or deported. This means providing them with medical care, psychological counseling, and legal aid to help them rebuild their lives. Public awareness campaigns are also crucial, both in seller countries to warn people about the traffickers' lies, and in buyer countries to highlight the ethical and human cost of participating in transplant tourism. We have to destigmatize the victims and dismantle the demand that fuels this trade. Ultimately, there is hope, but it requires collective action. It requires a global commitment to treat organ trafficking with the seriousness it deserves. It means boosting legal and ethical organ donation systems worldwide to shrink the black market. It means journalists continuing to expose these networks, activists continuing to demand change, and everyday people refusing to look away. The fight to protect the world's most vulnerable from this predatory trade is a fight for basic human dignity. It's a tough battle, but it's one we have to win. One person, one story, one action at a time. The price of doing nothing is far too high.